my name is Ben Sutton. I'm one of the tax professionals and one of the founders here at Mazuma. And so it's my pleasure to be with you today talking about preparing for the 2021 tax season, which of course happens in 2022. Hope you're having a good new year so far, and anything we can do to make taxes less of a burden this year is going to be good. So hopefully this presentation helps with that. And let's dive right in. I've got some slides to go through with you here. And from there, after I'm done with my presentation, we will move right into our Q&A portion of the webinar where you can ask any questions you'd like. Okay, so let's get right into it here. We've got 4 main topics today, and we're going to jump right into filing requirements. Okay, so what type of business tax returns do you file if you have a certain type of entity, right? So it can be confusing because, you know, LLCs can be single member LLCs or multi-member LLCs. LLCs can also be taxed as S corporations, and you never know, you know, what your LLC is going to look like in the end. So in this, am I touching something? Oh. Cool. Okay. About that. Okay, so just to be clear, if you are a single member LLC, if you formed an LLC entity and you are the only owner of that LLC, then you will be filing taxes on Schedule C of your Form 1040. All right, so the 1040 is your personal tax return, and Schedule C is just one of the subschedules on that return that is supposed to be filed as part of that 1040 personal return. So the deadline for your single member LLC is the same as your personal tax return, April 18th this year, is what the IRS is telling us. That's a Monday, April 18th. Multi-member LLCs have to file a separate business return. And so if you formed an LLC and there's more than one owner outside of your spouse, then you will have to prepare and file a 1065, Form 1065. And each of the owners of that LLC gets a K-1 to use file their personal tax return. The Form 1065 is due March 15th. So keep in mind that's, you know, a whole month earlier. Next, if you're an S Corp, just like the multi-member LLCs, your deadline is March 15th as well. Filing on a Form 1065, and each of the owners of the S Corp, even if there's only one owner, get a K-1 to use as part of their personal tax return filing. All right, and then there's the C Corp filing a Form 1120, also due on April 18th. So just a quick rundown of what type of form you should be filing and what the deadline is. And of course, Mazuma is going to be doing these for all of our clients. But wanted you to be aware, just so you know, you can confirm that we've, you know, got your entity type correct, and that the tax form we're filing for you is correct, and that you're aware of what the deadline is. Moving on now to extensions. So in the event where we're not quite ready to file your tax return, we can go ahead and extend the tax return filing. And by doing so, we basically buy ourselves an extra 6 months. And so the new deadline for personal returns, single member LLCs, and businesses are just what's shown there on this slide, 6 months later. That doesn't mean we have to wait 6 months, but it just gives us an extra 6 months to get that filed. Now, one little note is that when we file an extension for you, which is common practice, by the way, it's an extension of the filing date, not necessarily an extension of the payment date. Okay, so technically the IRS still expects you to pay your tax bill by the original deadline. But you don't have to worry too much about this when it comes to personal tax returns. So the 1040, if you don't pay your taxes on April 18th this year, and say you owe a few $1,000s, and we extend your tax return, and you don't make that payment on April 18th, well, the IRS is going to charge you a penalty for not paying by the 18th, but it's a very, very small penalty. Okay, it's 0.5% of the amount you owe per month. And so if you don't end up owing anything, then there's no penalty for filing late or for extending a tax return at all, because as long as you're getting money back, there's no late payment penalties and no late filing penalties either. So again, paying your tax bill on the deadline, April 18th, even though you're extending, is something to maybe think about if you're going to owe a lot of money. If you're not going to owe much, or you're going to get a refund, then no need to make a payment. The IRS also gives you a first year grace period. So if you didn't owe any money last year, then even if you owe money this year, they just wipe out that penalty for you and kind of give you 1 year free. So just keep that in mind, that when we're filing extensions, we're filing extensions for the filing date and not necessarily for the payment date, but the penalties are not anything to panic about. In filing an extension, sometimes people are really worried about filing an extension, and we don't like to prolong the process, so we don't like filing extensions either, but we do so just to protect you, right? And to make sure you're not incurring any penalties that you shouldn't. And so, there are some myths that go around out there about filing extensions, is that you have to have some specific reason, like, a hurricane hit or a disaster or something hit your business. And that's not the case. The extension, you qualify for an extension purely by the fact that you want one. And so it's an automatic extension. Some people also think that it causes a red flag on your return, and that might get you higher chances of being audited, which is definitely not the case. So many people do it for so many different reasons. The IRS knows that filing an extension does not mean you're doing something wrong, okay? It actually, in many cases, it means you're trying to make sure you do it right. And so the IRS is aware of that, and they don't penalize you for filing an extension. Okay, it also doesn't mean that you have to file 6 months later. You don't have to. We can file the day after the deadline for you. So it's not meant to kick the can down the road necessarily. It's just meant to avoid penalties associated with that deadline. And it's, like I said earlier, it's not only for people who are a mess or that are trying to do something shady. It's actually for people who are trying to make sure they do it right. So one little item I wanted to mention, going back actually to the penalties associated with filing an extension, that 0.5% of the amount you owe penalty is for personal taxes. Business taxes that file late, that don't extend and file late, do get penalized pretty significantly. So if you're a multi-member LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp, actually, sorry, not the C Corp, just the S Corp or multi-member LLC, you don't want to file late, which means you don't want to miss filing an extension. And we're going to do everything we can to file an extension for you if necessary. but they start penalizing you right away, a couple $100 per month per owner. So you could quickly rack up, $2, $4, $6, $1,000, $600, $1,000 worth of penalties really quickly for filing late. So we always if it looks like we're going to need to file an extension, Mazuma is always very careful about doing so, and we'll be asking you to provide the information we need to do so if we don't already have it. Okay, so moving on now to making payments. Here's just a little bit of info about making payments. You can make tax payments anytime. You can make them online, or you can write a check for personal taxes. You can write a check and mail it in with a payment voucher. For C corporations, they require you to make payments through the EFTPS system, which is a little bit more of a pain. You have to register and wait for them to send you a PIN in the mail and all this stuff that takes a couple weeks. So C Corps, make sure you're registered with EFTPS right away, so that when it's time to make the payment, you're not going through that registration process. But individuals can make payments, like I said, online, and it's pretty simple there on that irs.gov website. Okay, so what kind of information does Mazuma need in order to prepare your personal taxes? We always like to get a copy of last year's tax return, if this is the first year we're filing your return, to make sure that we're not missing anything that's relevant to you, things you forgot to tell us. There's a lot of information in the tax return, and it informs the following years pretty heavily. And so we always like to review the prior year's tax return before we do the current year. Other than that, it's the regular tax forms that you get in the mail: W-2s, 1099s, 1098s, any additional K-1s that you might have from other businesses. Unemployment and Social Security send you forms. Your mortgage interest company will send you a form. Then throughout the year, as you make charitable contributions or incur medical expenses, those are the types of things you need to keep records of. A lot of times you don't get a form at the end of the year summarizing those expenses. But any records of those we definitely want, so that we can itemize those and deduct them on your tax return. Real estate taxes, child care expenses, education expenses. These are additional deductions that are common and that we want to make sure and get from all of our clients if they have them. When it comes to a business return, same thing goes as far as the prior year tax return for the business. But of course, the tax return itself is based on the financial statements, which Mazuma is keeping track of and doing the bookkeeping so that you have those when it comes time to file your business return. We always like to get December bank and credit card statements, at least, so we can ensure that we've reconciled the whole year properly and that there's not a single transaction missing for the whole year. Any 1099s or loan statements that you can provide showing year-end amounts are really helpful and critical to getting your tax return right. And then we want to make sure and capture all the deductions, and a couple of those that we don't always see flowing through your bank accounts are, the mileage that you put on your business vehicle, and the home office square footage that you may be using for your business. So that's information that we would want to add on to your returns and would like you to provide to us at the end of the year. Okay, moving on now to deductions in general. The home office and mileage are just two, but all the others we are keeping track of, or attempting to keep track of, as we reconcile your business bank accounts all throughout the year. And so if anything happened outside of those business bank accounts that we're reconciling, we're not going to know about it unless you provide information. So if you paid for something on your personal credit card over here, or maybe paid for some expenses before you formed your LLC, and they're not going to show up in our records, then please provide that information to us so we don't miss claiming a deduction for you. That's the last thing we want to do. So deductions are anything that really helps your business, right? Anything that's commonly required in your industry, or that is necessary to keep your doors open and keep you operating, or to get you up and running. So anything that's ordinary and necessary is going to most likely be deductible if you've spent money on it during the year. Okay, so in your Mazuma dashboard, we've got a tax return page that is meant to help you monitor the progress of your tax returns getting done. Okay, and this is a high-level view of what it looks like. I know it's small. I'm going to switch to the next page here to talk about each section and specifically, but you know, we go through a lot of painstaking effort to try and make it as clear as possible for our clients to know what's going on, and to bridge the gap between you providing information and us delivering on the information you've provided, and getting that tax return prepared accurately and quickly for you. And so our latest attempt is to provide a page where you can view kind of a status of where your tax returns are at. Now it's not just a simple question, and so this page isn't as simple or as clean as we ultimately want it to be, but let me share with you what we do have here on these pages. So part one of the tax return monitor page is to try and help you know what we need before we can even begin drafting your tax returns. Okay, so we need you to provide a copy of last year's tax return for reasons I already mentioned. We also need you to complete a current tax return checklist, which is down below. I'm going to show a picture of that soon. But that ensures we've got right names, contact information, address, social security numbers. We have all your dependents, and a plethora of other information that is required to complete your tax return. That checklist is really important to fill out each year, and it'll roll forward from one year to the next. So if you provided information last year, you don't have to type it all in again. It'll be there for you. And then the fields that you need to update will still be there waiting for your input. But once that second step is complete, then the last thing is to make sure that we've got everything we need to complete your 2021 bookkeeping, right? Because every single bit of information we're processing on the bookkeeping side has to be transferred over into the tax return. So we've got to make sure we've got all of your business transactions recorded and categorized properly for 2021 before we can begin your business tax returns and personal tax returns, because your business returns need to be done before your personal return can be filed. Okay, so it looks like in this case, I've provided my last year's tax return. I've got my December 21 bookkeeping done. I'm January through December, I'm all up to date. I haven't yet completed the checklist. So if that's what I'm seeing here, that's where I need to go direct my attention. Okay, so that's part one. Part two is, so I'm done with part one. I've done everything I need to do in order to let Mazuma begin. Now I've got a status for each one of my tax returns here. So in this case, I've got a personal tax return and an S-Corp tax return sitting here that are in the process, are getting ready to be prepared. And so once your bookkeeping and tax return checklists are done, the S-Corp tax return can be started. So that provide information bubble will be filled. On the personal side, we're still waiting for W-2s. We might still be waiting for your mortgage interest and things like that. So once you unload all of the documents that you have, which are usually received by the end of January, right? All the W-2s, 1099s and stuff should be issued by the end of January. You're going to dump all of that on us. And then boom, your personal tax return, the provide information step is complete. So at that point, we believe we've got all that we need to draft your tax return. Now, in the process of preparing and drafting that return, we may come up with questions or see holes, or maybe we see something on last year's tax return that we didn't receive from you this year, and we need to verify where that information's at. So there may be a little bit of back and forth at that point, but at least the ball's in our court, and we're going to be moving things forward and requesting what we need from you in the meantime. And you'll see, when we request things from you, it'll show here on this tile. And so you should receive emails indicating that we're waiting on some piece of information. When you log in here, you click on the link to the email and it will take you straight to this page and show you exactly what it is we are waiting on. Okay. Of course, after we've drafted the tax return, we're going to send it to you and let you take a look at it before we're not going to file anything until you've had a chance to review it as thoroughly as you want, ask any questions you have, and sign off on it. And only then will we send it off to the IRS and to the state tax agencies for you. Okay. So hopefully these pages help you. We know, we're trying to make it as simple as possible, but we just need to give you something where you can check the status on your own and not have to worry about calling in or chat or emailing us every time. Now you can call in and you can chat us and you can email us just like you normally do, which if you're ever feeling like you don't know what's going on here, we encourage you to reach out to us and ask. But hopefully this gives you something you can process and digest on your own. Okay, and the last page of our tax return, section on the dashboard is this tax return checklist, which I mentioned. So this is just basic information that we're looking for to ensure that your tax return is complete and accurate. It's going to ask you just a bunch of information about names, socials, your dependents, confirming that you're filing, married filing joint or single. Are there any other additional owners of your business that we're not aware of? Things like that. So we do ask that you complete this tax return checklist before we begin preparing your tax return. So right now, I'd encourage you to go in there and do this. Just get it out of the way. Fill out all the information, hit submit, finalize it so that that step is done for you. And you can just worry about answering any questions we have or getting us the statements for December, bookkeeping or whatever else might be holding things up. All righty. Okay, well, I hope that helps you have an idea of the things that we're concerned with around tax time and how we can help you get your tax returns prepared and filed and extended if necessary. We hope it's as smooth of a process for you as possible, and we're always here to answer any questions you've got along the way. With that, we'll go ahead and move into our Q&A portion. Katie asks, is it best to file quarterly? That's a great question, Katie. So the concept of filing quarterly can easily be confused with some other requirements that are out there. There are, for personal, when it comes down to personal or business taxes, business income taxes, there's no forms that need to be filed quarterly, only unless we're talking about payroll filings, right? So payroll tax returns need to be filed quarterly. But your question probably revolves maybe more around paying your taxes quarterly. And so business income taxes or personal income taxes can be paid, excuse me, can be paid quarterly instead of all at once at the end of the year. So if you do anticipate owing a significant amount of money at the end of the year, then yes, you should be making a lump sum payment quarterly so that when it comes time to file your tax return, there's not a huge bill sitting there for you to pay when we prepare and file your return. We want you to get that money paid in throughout the year. The IRS wants that too. And so yes, if you are going to end up owing a significant amount of taxes, it is better to pay those taxes quarterly. But you're not required to file any tax forms quarterly. Okay. All right, next question. What if we use Zelle to pay each other in a multi-member LLC? That's fine, David. You know, using Zelle is just as good as writing a check or, you know, transferring money any other way. The key will be to just make sure we can identify what those Zelle payments were for. So if you put a memo in there, then that should enable us and you to help us figure out what those payments were for. So yeah, that's no big deal. All right, next question. If you have a multi-member LLC and you're filing married and your husband is not a part of your business, should you still file jointly? Yes, Valeria. So the way that works is that the multi-member LLC has a tax return that is prepared. Each of the owners gets a K1, and one of those owners is you. So you're going to take your K1, go over to your married filing jointly 1040 return with your spouse, put the K1 in there and file jointly with your spouse. So yes, it is most likely going to be beneficial for you to file jointly with your husband still, even though he's not an owner in that LLC. All right, next question. How do I go about filing sales taxes as an online vendor who sells in multiple states? So this is a great question and very applicable to many of our clients. Sales taxes are not something we file for you. In that case, Sukanmi, is you're going to want to leverage tools that are provided by your point of sale system. So if you're selling, like the platform that you sell from, if it's Amazon or Etsy or some platform like that that is or Shopify, you know, that's facilitating these transactions across the country and to other states, they should help you keep track of all of these sales, right? Now, a company like Avalara is another tool that is very helpful for keeping track of these sales that have sales tax applied to them. At the end of every month or quarter, you've got to file a sales tax return with any of the states that you cross the threshold with. Okay, so the states all have their own threshold of how much business you have to do in their state before you have to file sales tax returns in their state. So the reports that you get from your sales platform should show you how much business you've done in each state. And then you're going to need to find out what the thresholds are, the filing thresholds are in those states. And usually they're like 100 transactions or $100,000 of sales in a single state before you have to file. You know, they vary from state to state, but that's an example. So it's not like if you make one sale across the country to, you know, to someone not in your state that you're going to have to file sales taxes there. It's only if you do enough sales in those states to be required to. So hopefully that helps you get started in the right direction there. But I'd really leverage the resources that you should have with your point of sale system or the platform that you're using to make those sales. Okay, Manuel asks, as a Mazuma member, will my bookkeeper file taxes for me, or would I have to pay additional fee? Manuel, it's included, the tax returns are included in your monthly subscription. So if you were a member last year and you started your subscription with Mazuma in 2021, then we're going to be filing your 2021 taxes for you. There's no additional fees for that. Okay, Dana asks, how do I make an appointment to talk about personal taxes? Dana, if you want to, so if you're a business, a starter subscriber, then you'll need to chat in or email in and ask for an appointment with a tax professional, which they're ready and able to talk to you. So if you're a Business Plus subscriber, you can just log into your dashboard and click on the tax plan link and click the button right there and schedule that appointment. All right. Jason says, in a transportation company where my truck is parked at a warehouse, the miles I drive from home with my personal car are part of work miles. So let's see here. So Jason, the rule is that commuting is not deductible. So commuting is not counted as business miles. So in this case, it sounds like you drive truck, you've got that truck parked at the warehouse, and you go to and from home, back and forth between the warehouse. So those trips, unfortunately, it's sounding like between home and the warehouse are not going to be business miles because that's a commute. Okay. All right. Well, that looks like it's all our questions for now. Thank you all very much for participating here with me. It was good to be with you, and I hope the information was helpful, and hope you have a successful 2021 tax season. Thank you.